don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Only you know, God. And this week, we move into another story that begins in grief. So, John the Baptist, a prophet, a person who's a movement maker, spirit-led. He's dead. Executed by a king who made a reckless promise at a party in a drunken stupor and was too proud to take it back. John was his kinsman. John was his forebearer. John was the one who prepared the way. And a prophet is executed because of one man's vanity. This is the logic of scarcity, that there's not enough dignity to go around. And so some people's lives become expendable. We are living inside of that logic right now in this world. And some of us have been paying attention for a long time. And paying attention has a cost. There's a particular kind of tired that comes from loving people that the world keeps deciding don't count. From showing up when it feels like showing up is like taking a cup of water and throwing it at a burning building. That sense of futility hits you in the gut. That tired is real. And the gospel doesn't ask us to pretend otherwise. The scarcity narrative is not an accident. I believe it is a strategy to keep people believing that there is not enough safety, not enough belonging, not enough hope left to try again. It's how concentrated power maintains itself. And so this morning I bring you these two old stories that refuse that strategy at the very root. 5,000 people, a remote place, it's getting late. The text tells us that Jesus went to a deserted place, a wilderness, alone. And the crowds followed him anyway. Not for a program, because the grief had happened and they couldn't stay away. They followed because they didn't want to grieve alone. And Matthew says Jesus saw them and had compassion. So I want you to hear the Greek word. It's splagchizonomiai, which sounds to me like what happens in your intestines when you have beans and cabbage, and a bit too much, a large side order of onion rings. Think of it, splagchizonomia. But there's something there because it means compassion from the gut. It's gut movement. It's not a decision. It's a visceral turning around, turning toward. Jesus was moved with compassion from the gut, and he healed people all day, even in the midst of his grief. It wasn't a decision. The day went long. And then the disciples did the math. Send the crowds away. And Jesus says back, you, give them something to eat. He says that to his disciples. And through them, eventually, to us. We have nothing here. 5 loaves, 2 fish. The math doesn't work. Anyone with a spreadsheet can tell you that. Believe us, some of us know. Okay. The disciples are not wrong to count. They're wrong about what to count. Because they aren't only standing in front of their own supply. They're standing in front of 5,000 people, not to mention women and children, so maybe it was more like 10,000 or 15,000, who had already brought everything they had, not only their grief. And Jesus blesses what this community brings. Not what the leadership had calculated with their spreadsheets, what the community brings. 12 baskets left over. So it's Pride Month, and I think back about 2008 when the California law said some marriages matter more than others. We chose, for every marriage I performed, to ask the couples for a blessing of the covenant, not a civil ceremony, until the day that that became a right for everyone. Every single couple chose the blessing. That's 5 loaves and 2 fish, placed in God's hands. And right now the government says some families belong and some don't. And people in this room are showing up in all kinds of ways. We recently made a commitment to show up for a Guatemalan family, Amanda and her 2 children, whose husband has been deported, and they're afraid to open their door. That's 5 loaves and 2 fish. Rabbi Sharon Brous from Ikar Temple writes about an ancient ritual from the time of the Second Temple. Pilgrims would enter the plaza, turning to the right, except for one group, the mourners. They would turn to the left against the current. And this tradition gave the community a structure for meeting those in grief. Those walking from the right would look up into the eyes of the mourners and ask, what happened? Does your heart ache? And offer a blessing. You are not alone. And so picture that scene, 5, 10, 15,000 people in that wilderness who had all just lost someone precious. Jesus had gone alone to grieve, and the crowd went anyway with their own grief into that same deserted place. No one in that story was not grieving. And Brous calls this the Amen effect. These sincere, tender encounters that remind us that all of our lives are intertwined. Our destinies are intertwined. That instinct to bring what you have into the place of grief turns out to be enough. Turns out to be ancient. So the reading from Exodus, which Matthew's followers, Jesus himself would have known, is one that almost never gets preached. The Israelites are there in the wilderness, fleeing Pharaoh's slavery. It's taking a whole lot longer than any of them expected, 40 years in the wilderness. Started to question this leader. they've left Egypt and they are not yet anywhere. This matters because it happened right after that incident with the golden calf. While Moses had been up there, the people melted their gold jewelry together, and they made themselves a god that they could see and control. The same people who made that idol are the same people who are now building a tabernacle, a moving temple, a moving sanctuary. And it's not for a God they made for themselves. It's a dwelling place for the God that is moving them. A God who is already here with us. It's not a building. It's poles and fabrics and gifts of the people. And it's made to be carried. God's presence made mobile, on the move, with us. And the same hands that shaped that calf now are cutting the acacia wood. The same voices that called that idol their God now bring their gold and silver back to the real God, to the living God. So this is not a story about people who got it right. It's a story about people like us, which is honestly, I find, a relief. Moses calls for everyone whose heart was stirred. Again, it's in the body. Isn't that interesting? Whose heart was stirred. Everyone whose spirit was willing. And the Hebrew word is nadav, which means free will, ungoverned. So it's not a tithe. It's not an obligation. It's because your heart was stirred. God fills the craftsman not just with gold and silver, but with skill, intellect, knowledge, craftsmanship. The whole person, every body, every ability they have. And they bring, and they keep on bringing, morning after morning, until Moses has to say the word stop. We have more than enough. The Hebrew is dayam, the same root as dayenu. And dayenu is a song that they sung during the Passover that asks, what would have been enough? It's not a song about getting everything. Dayenu answers, it would have been, it's a song about recognizing maybe we didn't get everything we wanted, but we got what was already sufficient. And I can't help but think of Mick Jagger. You can't always get what you want. You get what you need. It's a song about enough. There's an abundance, not scarcity. Our daily bread, we say it every week, manna from heaven, enough to sustain us on the way. Which gets to the heart of why we're alive as individuals. Why are we here? What is our purpose? Something to do, someone to love, something to hope for. What is our hope, our meaning? Or in Japanese, it's called ikigai, which also correlates with longevity, our life purpose that sustains us. What would we choose even if nothing more came? The people who sang Dayenu at the Passover are the same people who brought so much that Moses had to make them stop. And that word Diane doesn't only live in the wilderness in ancient times. It lives here, now, in us. It lives in our own individual lives if we listen to it. Some of us are running on empty now, right now, not metaphorically. Some of us have been loving people who are afraid to answer the door, who are in prison, who are being denied their basic human rights in this country, in the city, in the world, trying to figure out, what do I have left to give? And that question is the disciples' math applied to our own life. And it may be just as wrong. Nadav doesn't mean giving from your surplus. It doesn't mean wait until you feel ready, because none of us would do anything. It means what's already stirring within your heart, in your gut, that moves you. Not from obligation or guilt, but from what's alive. Start there. And if you want to know what it feels like in your body, come to the sanctuary this afternoon and find out more. We know something about that here. Not long ago, this congregation was staring down a loss of $250,000. By the world's math, we shouldn't be here. And yet, because of the courage and commitment in this room, we are. Not because the institution needs saving, but because we know our why. We know what the tabernacle is for. This is not math. It's Diane. What makes us come alive. And it doesn't stop here, because the tabernacle isn't for storage. It goes with us. It goes with them. It's on the move. In the courtrooms where rights we thought were settled are being unsettled. To the coastline already measuring what's being lost. Into the room where a black family closes on their first home in a neighborhood that has tried to keep them out. Into the classroom where they're policing what a teacher can teach and what their students are allowed to know about themselves. Into a detention facility where a father hasn't seen his children for months. Every one of those places, for someone who stopped believing there's not enough to go around. That is the why. Not survival, not the institution. Neither is our why. Our why is we've been given these gifts. Our lives, our time, our presence, our unique talents, our voice, our skill are showing up. And the world is full of places where those gifts are the difference between someone alone in their grief and someone knowing they are not. That is enough of a reason. This is what we are stewarding. Not a budget, not a building, something worth building. The capacity to carry God's presence. into wherever the grief is, wherever the healing's needed. The Spirit is moving. It's moving us if we open ourselves to it. Melt us, mold us, fill us, use us. In a world telling people that their grief is inconvenient, that their story is dangerous, that their presence is a problem, that small question that begins with compassion and turning toward. What happened? What happened to you is not a small thing. It is resistance. It is the kingdom, not of Caesar, but of God. Amen. And so please join in our hymn of response, Skyline Songbook number 5, verses 1 and 3, Christ be our light.
Longing for light,